topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan.
Thanks for joining in, everybody. Today, I'm Kevin Hallinan. Welcome back to another episode of Winning Business Radio on W4CY.com. Now Winning Business TV, live streaming on Talk4TV.com. In addition to Facebook, you can find us at Winning Business Radio. The mission of this show, as most viewers and listeners know, is to offer insights and advice to help people avoid the mistakes of others, right? To learn best practices. Those are the how-tos, the what-tos, the what-not-tos, to be challenged and certainly to be inspired by the successes of others. But, you know, virtually every successful person that I've ever talked to has had some form of failure in their lives and careers. So while we all have to get our knees skinned once in a while, I'm driven to keep those scrapes from needing major surgery. I say it every week. Let's endeavor to learn from history so we don't repeat it. Today, my guest is Paul Vecchione, digital marketing consultant. Here's his bio. Paul Vecchione is a digital marketing consultant with LOCALiQ, part of the USA Today network, and serves as the digital marketing arm of Gannett. As a Google Premier Partner digital marketing agency, LOCALiQ leverages data, insights, and smart technology to offer businesses pay-per-click, that's PPC, and search engine optimization, SEO services, social media marketing, video marketing, web design, and a bunch of other digital marketing offerings that we'll get into. Paul has over 15 years of digital marketing, sales, and consulting experience, focusing on legal services, professional services, education, medical and dental, and home services. Paul and his team at LOCALiQ build and execute effective marketing plans for clients that simplify their marketing and provide them with the most innovative and effective ways to reach their customers across the entire customer journey, from the trigger event to conversion. We'll talk about those two things as well. Paul's a multi-talented, creative, and cross-functional sales professional with diverse, significant experience in digital media advertising and marketing strategies. His specific skills include business development, territory prospecting, client relationship development and management, market segment sales strategies, producing results, and delivering process efficiencies to support scalable growth plans. That's a mouthful. When not working in digital marketing, Paul practices Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and enjoys time outdoors, running, biking, and kayaking with family and friends. He and his wife, Tanya, have been married for 20 years as of this September, and they have a 13-year-old daughter, Danny. They live in Holliston, Massachusetts, with Dean, who's an Old English sheepdog, and Belle, who's a rescue cat. Paul, welcome to Winning Business TV and Radio.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you got it. So before we continue, I know your birthday's this week.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you. This is a nice birthday present for me this week to join you on your show.
You mentioned earlier that 13 is not an unlucky number. In fact, it's a lucky number for you guys.
Yeah, it's kind of our lucky number for the family. So I was born July 13th, married September 13th, and my daughter birthday is November 13th. So I think you can probably imagine what our lottery numbers are.
If you don't play more than once, right?
Yeah, when the Powerball gets big, you kind of can figure out what our Powerball numbers are.
That's funny. So happy 20th, happy birthday, and
21 again.
21 again. So tell us about Tanya.
Tanya is my best friend.
Awesome.
It's interesting. It's actually funny because my daughter went to summer camp for the first time. So six weeks away from summer camp, and we're driving back, and we come to the realization that, you know what, it's been about 13 years since we've actually had this amount of time uninterrupted together. And it's interesting, right? Because, you know, when you get married, you know, you're at a certain place, and then you start a family, and then you start careers, and then you have successes, and then you have setbacks. And, the one thing that I am so grateful for and so proud of is, the best friend and the woman in my life, because when you come from, tough times, and that person's been with you through the tough times, it makes the good times that much more sweet.
Yeah, we went through years and years ago. I mean, this was mid to late 90s, a business bankruptcy, business failure. I would never want anybody to go through that, but we powered through, and it's something we still talk about. It's something that still motivates me, at least, and her to some degree. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Those tough times forge you together. Not just a cliche either.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's when you look at the people in your life, it's the tough times really define, like, who are really your people, and who are kind of there for the party.
That's outstanding. So, Paul, I always like viewers and listeners to see and hear the background of guests. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Arlington, Massachusetts.
Or as we say, Arlington.
Arlington. Gotta let it come out.
Arlington. Tell us about that city and what it was like to grow up there.
It's
actually,
is
Arlington a town?
Arlington is.
It's got a city feeling because it's right next to Boston, but
I feel like it's become like an extension of Cambridge, but because it does border Cambridge. But
right.
When I grew up there, it was largely, I think, probably fair to say, a blue collar town, working class town. I don't remember it as being particularly affluent. And it's the town itself has really evolved. To the point where I don't think I could afford the real estate, but
just about everywhere.
Yeah, but it was a great place to grow up. I ended up going to Catholic high school. I went to Matignon High School.
Matignon, yep.
I'll answer right away. No, I did not play hockey at Matignon. My hockey career peaked at 14, so that was about it. But
funny.
But yeah, no, it was a great school. And I enjoyed it. I made great friends. My best men and groomsmen, were actually, two of them were from high school. So,
cool.
Had those strong friendships.
Yeah. One of my son's buddies went to Matignon.
Yeah.
Actually, they grew up in West Roxbury, and then they moved over to, I think during the time he was at Matignon, they moved to Route 1, I want to say Malden.
Okay.
Went back and forth there. So, did both of your parents work?
Yeah, my parents got divorced when I was young. So we had been living in Maryland. My mother was originally from here. I'm not sure the full truthful story, but we ended up moving back up here. My aunt and uncle had a 2-family house in Arlington, so we moved in to the lower 4 with them. And then shortly thereafter, my parents got divorced. And, unfortunately, my father, he was a Vietnam vet. He was also a former police officer. I think, we know so much more about mental health now.
Yeah.
And addiction and things like ADHD and things like that. But at the time, that stuff wasn't really, I don't know if it was understood or appreciated. And, as I've come to learn more about those topics, I've come to realize that he was probably afflicted with all three. But at any rate, to give you a shorter answer to your question, we moved up there. My parents ended up divorcing when I was about 7. And unfortunately, my father struggled with a lot of addiction issues. And then it got to the point where I was about 12, and I kind of just had to cut him out of my life. I literally had a come to Jesus moment with him where I said, look, you're not good for me. Yeah. You're not good for yourself. You're not good for my sister. I want you to go. I need you out of my life, and I need you to go fix your life. And then if you can, come back. And he never really came back.
Wow, that's tough.
That's kind of the condensed version, but it's basically what happened. And so it's interesting, when you come back and now you're a parent, and you kind of think about, well,
I was going there too. I was going to ask you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, what type of a parent do you want to be? And for me, I had various different adult role models. And I think one of the big things, in the world today is, you know, it's people in general, how to have the high self-esteem and how to conduct yourself properly and stuff like that. But, just understanding like, what does it really mean to be a man, and what is, for lack of a better term, manhood, being honorable, being a person of character and integrity. And fortunately, I had some really good people in my life, and that helped shape me. I also started to get exposed to some personal development stuff, and that helped. So in many cases, a lot of like the personal development stuff that I learned, they actually kind of became like my uncles or my mentors in my mind.
Yeah.
Like someone like a Zig Ziglar or a Brian Tracy. I didn't know them personally, but they were kind of like a standard of kind of excellence.
Yeah. Love that. So I want to ask you about, you got a degree in poli-sci, but what were your early interests? Was that something, were politics something you were interested in? Did that kind of just happen? Tell me about that.
Really, I went to college because my mom wanted me to go to college.
Yeah.
I didn't really have any idea why I was going to college.
Yeah.
And I went because I was really the first person to go to college.
Wow.
And so, it was kind of one of those things where you went to Matanon, you went to a good high school, you should go to college.
Yep.
And I really didn't have a, argument against it. I just really didn't have much of a vision. And, I was fortunate, I got some scholarship, I got some financial aid and stuff, but I still had to pay. So originally I was a business major. And what I found was just the course load to stay on top of being a business major, because I was working. I was playing rugby, but then I was working essentially like a full-time job.
What was the job?
I did security for a security company. And the reason I did it was because the school, I went to St. Anselm College. The school was just outside of Manchester.
New Hampshire.
And, and I could work for the security company, kind of funky hours to make it kind of work around, doing rugby and doing classes and stuff like that. So I actually ended up switching to poli-sci, quite frankly, not because I had this deep vision of being an international, but simply because, hey, it was interesting. I need a college degree.
Yeah.
I can manage, I've always been kind of more of a project manager. Like, you don't necessarily want me managing your accounting books, but I'm good at managing an overall project. So that, aside from being just very interesting to me, history and poli-sci was just very interesting to me, how that all worked and how it affected society. That was just interesting. But then it was actually something that I felt like, you know what, I can see this through the next 3 years to graduate.
So one last question, I think, not a quick one, take your time, but before the break. Early career, you started out as at AmeriCorps Vista, Fuel and Housing Assistance Coordinator. Sounded like that was meaningful work. Tell us about that.
That was an interesting experience. So originally, I had a little bit of a better sense of mission once I was coming out of school. And at the time, I graduated in 1991. And if you have any recollection of that time, it wasn't a great job market in particular. And, I had a mission in my mind. I wanted to do something significant. I wanted to serve. I investigated joined the Coast Guard. And what I found was for officer candidate school, I didn't qualify based on vision. I found out that I had a color deficiency.
Really?
Apparently they call it shade deficiency. So if you don't qualify on a certain grade, you can't become like a pilot. And I was interested in aviation, and I couldn't do it. So then I was like, well, what else do I want to do to serve? And I thought about the Peace Corps. But at the time, my mother wasn't in the greatest health, and I felt reluctant to leave. So I was looking for different options to serve, and I found out about AmeriCorps. And at this time, it was like the early version of the AmeriCorps. And so it basically was like the Urban Peace Corps. And so it was run out of University of Lowell. And what I was tasked with was working at a community action agency and managing a budget for housing assistance, fuel assistance. Salvation Army also had like a program that they coordinated with us on for, different family needs. And that was a good experience just because it opened my eyes to see how other people lived. And it's funny because, I grew up thinking that my family wasn't particularly affluent, but then you see people who are worse off than you.
I know.
And it just sort of is a paradigm shift a little bit,
Definitely
so that was a really good experience just because I was given a lot of responsibility just because, it's a nonprofit, right? So they need bodies and they need people, committed bodies. And so they ended up giving me a lot of responsibility. And so I ended up staying there about 3 or 4 months extra, just because I really enjoyed it. But I then saw that, I really, coming from the background I came from, learning what I'd been starting to learn through personal development, like Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, stuff like that. I really wanted to do something, sales oriented. I wanted to try to do better financially. So, I really enjoyed it. I was able to help a lot of people. It was great. It was very rewarding, particularly around the holidays when you saw people who literally, can't heat their home and you're able to get them through a winter. It's that made me feel good.
Well, let's come back and talk about that in a couple minutes. We're going to be back in just about 2 or 3 minutes with Paul Vecchione from LOCALiQ.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Hey everyone, I'm Jimmy Star, the king of cool and your host of the Jimmy Star Show, the entertainment radio show for all you cool and unique people looking to get a behind-the-scenes peek at what's going on in the entertainment industry. Listen in as me and my cool crowd of co-hosts bring you celebrity guests, new music, and the good times in fashion, entertainment, and pop culture. Right, everybody? Right! Tune in live Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on W4CY.com.
Hey, this is Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and you're listening to W4CY Radio.
Hey, this is Rebel Medler. Join me for In Your Face on W4CY.com, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Vecchione Wealth Management is a second-generation, family-owned financial planning and wealth advisory firm. In addition to coordinating complex business and personal planning needs, our firm takes a sincere interest in your well-being and personal values. Find us at bestgenwm.com. That's bestgenwm.com, where we consider all our clients an extension of our family. Advisory service is offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
Welcome back with Paul Vecchione. It's to me, Paul, you got involved in personal development, as most people call it, really early, right?
Yeah, I think it was funny too, because
which is outstanding, by the way. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah. And I wish I could tell you like a great story of how I started to stumble across stuff, but I really don't remember. But I remember hearing stuff from like Earl Nightingale. And then Think and Grow Rich. And then I kind of learned about it, and then you go off to college, you kind of forget about it, and then it's funny, you come out of college, and then you kind of get out in life again, and you rediscover things, and so once I started getting into sales, what I found was that, I think this is anything in life. I think it's in sales. I think it's in your personal relationships. I think it's in your bank account. You can't rise above. You are the story you most believe about yourself, and you're not going to rise above that story. And that story creates a container in which you live. And, I started to realize that if I want to expand that container, I have to kind of invest in myself and invest in different resources. And it wasn't just, learning how to sell a product. It was, I got to get a better understanding of who I am and self-esteem and things like that. And I think, learning that stuff, learning, that, I am the story I believe about myself.
That's right.
And, if your story's not empowering you, it's just a BS story that you've made up based upon past experience and what you've let in. And so if it's not empowering you, build a better story. And I think the personal development, when you make the investment in personal development, it's a continuous thing. It's not just a thing you do once. It's a thing that I'm still doing now. Because, all the other stuff that gets in here and in here, it's like gravity, right? And, by making the investment in personal development, I think that's the helium. That's the thing that's sort of lifting you up and helping you keep perspective. And, as I've learned in self-development, I've had some great role models in this, but, the purpose of your life, really, I've learned, and this is just, my vision, the purpose of life is expansion in all different areas of your life, expanding as much as you can and increasing the value of your ability to serve and to give. And that was something that I had to learn, particularly when you're coming from a background where you didn't have a lot of money and you're thinking, I want. And over time, you start to learn that, well, if you want, you've got to give. If you want to get paid more, you got to be more valuable. If you want to add value, if you want something from somebody else, you've got to be able to add some type of value to them, whether it's in a relationship or in a business context. So, yeah, I think Jim Rome said, it's a classic line from him, work harder on yourself than you do your business, because that'll then it'll feed your business. And I really found that true in my life. And anytime my life or, my sales or finances have gotten off the rail, it's usually because I've gotten outside of those fundamentals.
That's really good. It's good stuff. So you moved over to the sales world, sold insurance for a bit, and then you went over to the mortgage industry. Talk about that move.
That was probably the best.
Yeah.
From a professional, how you have a turning point?
I do. I've got two of them that we can talk about another time. But
yeah, financial turning points. That was really a financial, not a financial, a career turning point, because what ended up happening was I got recruited to work in the mortgage industry, and it was from a family friend who was a successful account executive. He was basically a wholesale, at the time they called a wholesale account executive. So basically he was representing a lender and he was working with different mortgage brokers. And so basically they would facilitate the funding the deals and things like that. So I went to work for that company, and I worked my backside off, learned a lot. And basically the issue was, I was doing well. I was opening up a lot of accounts, but the company that I worked for it was a very vanilla ice cream company. It was very risk averse. So we didn't really have very many niches to kind of come into a new broker and say, hey, this is what we can do for you that someone else can't do. But it was interesting because, the brokers kept trying to recruit me to work for them. And I said, hey, I'm looking at how they're doing. I said, this might be a good opportunity for me. And I ended up then getting recruited by a company, and you might remember this, Champion Mortgage.
I certainly do.
Champion Mortgage.
Yeah.
They used to have Mr. Goyab, and he used to say, when Champion says no, when banks say no, Champion says yes.
Yeah, they were big.
They were huge. They came out of New Jersey, and they were, they expanded through most of the country, but definitely up the Northeast. And what was great about that is I thought I knew a little bit about self-development, but they really invested in their people in sales training. So they did a lot on consultative selling, spin selling, also just a lot of personal development, a lot in the area of like Covey, Tony Robbins stuff. And so just tying all that together, it was really empowering, because I really learned how sales works.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like psychology and a logical process, it wasn't like a black box.
From a professional, this is, preaching to the choir, as you know, right?
Yeah, of
From
course,
a professional perspective rather than just pitching stuff to people, right?
Yeah, because the impression is that people are born salespeople. And I think a lot about sales is something that most good salespeople, I think a lot of they have certain maybe personal attributes that contribute.
Sure.
But to be a real effective sales professional, there's things you got to learn. There's things you have to unlearn. There's things about psychology and human behavior, and just understanding and being able to have that consultative sales process and handling your own emotions and handling a rejection and kind of how you reframe things and things like that. So just that whole process of learning the skills was just really empowering, because sales was no longer a black box to me.
Right.
It was logical. It made sense. There was a process. And then, adding the self-development to it, just kind of added some gasoline to the fire.
That's outstanding. All right. Then you made your way over to marketing, advertising, marketing, Yellow Book.
Yes. Yep.
Very, very different. Still sales, right?
Yeah.
But a different industry. Did you get out of mortgages? Oh, it was 01. So that was a difficult time too.
Yeah. So they say everything's timing, right?
Yeah.
If somebody could do as many things wrong as possible leading up to a banking crisis, I did it.
Yeah.
So decided that I was doing well where I was working in the mortgage industry. Said I'm doing so well, I'm going to go out and do my own net branch. And then at the same time, I had recently bought a property. And at the same time, we were looking to start a family. And so perfect storm. All of a sudden, I go from doing really well to not being able to close a loan.
Yeah.
And so that was tough. And so I was at a point financially where I had to make a pivot. I needed to start earning money again. So I said, okay, well, I've got, really proven sales skills, and, where can I apply those? And, I went into the marketing, not because I was deeply invested into marketing, but I'm like, you know what? I'm a good salesperson. I'm a hard worker. I can learn this. And the thing that was intriguing is Google was just starting to become like the thing, right? And so I saw where that was going, and I said, you know what? This is a good place to learn. I don't know how long I'm going to stay, but this is going to be a good place to learn marketing and B2B sales, because I already have successful B2C sales, and now I'm going to be a little bit more well-rounded, and I can then figure out what I'm going to do with that. So my thought was I'll do it for a year, let the economy kind of settle back down and get back into mortgages. And it just kind of took off. I was really successful. I really liked it. I did extremely well when I started, and it was funny because sometimes ignorance is your best friend in some ways, because I came in there and I really didn't realize it at the time, but I ended up making my quota for the year in like 3 months. And it was just because I was motivated, number one, to make money. And I didn't have a paradigm of like what I'm supposed to be able to do and not do. And people are like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just, I went through the training program and they tell you this is the sales model and they follow the sales model and they just prospect every day. But like, I didn't have a paradigm. I didn't kind of know any better. So I did really, really well right out of the gate. And then, they were really starting to try to transition. Yellow at the time was Yellow Book. Now they're branded as Haibu, but they were trying to kind of navigate their book business into digital. And so I really took to that, and I was really, really successful at digital sales, extremely successful. And then to the point where it's like, all right, well, I've got to get out of this, because particularly in our area, Yellow Pages was rapidly deteriorating as far as market share and relevance in the consumer's mind. This is right around where the recession time was as well. So advertisers were looking for, better avenues or different avenues. Other companies had come into the space that were really essentially attacking Yellow Page advertisers. Yeah. So I said, I need to make a shift. And so I investigated opportunities, and that's where I actually went and transitioned to Propel Marketing. Propel Marketing was at the time owned by Gatehouse. Gatehouse then got acquired by New Media Investment Group, rebranded as Upcurve, and then eventually New Media Investment Group merged with Gannett, and here I am today under the brand umbrella of LOCALiQ. And LOCALiQ actually includes the entire USA Today network, which is 256 local newspaper brands in 46 states. So our news footprint, our journalism footprint, touches about 1 in every 2 people in the United States. And then our IQ, I call it, our technology piece is really Reach Local, WordStream, and ThriveHive. And those companies all are kind of merged together under the brand of LOCALiQ.
All right, hold that thought. We're going to take our second break right here. We'll be back in 2 or 3 minutes, once again, with Paul Vecchione.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Have you ever dreamed of having your own radio show? Well, W4CY Radio makes dreams come true. You can be a radio personality on the #1 ranked internet radio station in West Palm Beach, Florida. We can be heard in 105 countries and all U.S. states. Promote your business, earn up to $10,000 per month and more. It's all up to you. Have fun and be heard. Call 561-506-4031. That's 561-506-4031. Start your radio show now.
This is Rebel Medler. Join me for In Your Face on W4CY.com, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bestgen Wealth Management is a second-generation, family-owned financial planning and wealth advisory firm. In addition to coordinating complex business and personal planning needs, our firm takes a sincere interest in your well-being and personal values. Find us at bestgenwm.com. That's bestgenwm.com, where we consider all our clients an extension of our family. Advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor.
Hey, this is Johnny Three Tears from Hollywood Undead, and you're listening to W4CY Radio.
I do whatever it takes to make it break through. Anything I'm face to face with, it's true.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We're back for the final segment with Paul Vecchione, digital marketing consultant with LOCALiQ. Paul, break that down. Tell us about the company and your role.
So in my role as we call it a DMC, a digital marketing consultant, primarily I'm the coordinator of the project. So I'm actually doing outreach for sales, acquiring clients, but then actually doing the initial consultations and working with the clients. And in some cases, my strategic sales engineering team to put together media plans and marketing plans for clients.
So you take a look at what they've got at present, where they're trying to go, right? And develop a plan.
And come up with a marketing plan that's going to help them accomplish their goals. And typically, what we're really looking to help them do is to, who is their customer?
Mm-hmm.
Who's that customer that they're trying to engage?
I was going to ask you at some point to give a couple, kind of client examples. If you want to fit that into this answer, you can do that too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is helping. I mean, it's kind of funny. We were talking about goal setting earlier, and I feel a lot of times, part of my job, aside from initially engaging clients with what we can offer and setting up an initial consultation, but once we get into that consultation mode, a lot of it is really a conversation. And it's funny, we're talking about goals, but a lot of times it's really very similar to a goal setting session, because you're talking about, what is the ultimate outcome that we're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How are we going to track and measure that? What are the pieces or the steps that we need to do to put that together? And then, who is our audience? In other words, like, who are we trying to reach? What do we actually want them to do? And how are we going to track and measure it?
Do a lot of companies,
platforms?
Sorry, do you think a lot of companies are unclear as to who they want to reach, or are they very clear as to who they want to reach?
I think some of it depends on the size and the scale of the client. So
right.
In my role, it's interesting. And I like this aspect of this role. I work with small and medium-sized businesses, but then I also work with much larger businesses.
So for you guys, define small to medium to large.
Small to me is a business that, maybe it's a law firm. It's got 3 or 4 partners.
Mm-hmm.
They're interested in growing the practice, increasing their presence in their pipeline. It's the HVAC company with 3 or 4 trucks.
Mm-hmm.
It's the dental practice who maybe has 1 or 2 locations. That to me is the small to mid.
Okay.
Above that, you kind of have the mid-size. And then we also have, one of the areas that I also work in is working with other web development and other typically specialty marketing agencies. They might be focused on PR, they might be focused on branding, or specific more niche areas of marketing,
mm-hmm.
and collaborate with them to sort of be their marketing arm, and partner with them in terms of serving the needs of their clients. And in many cases, when I do that, an agency will bring me in with a client, and sometimes those clients might be larger scale clients.
Mm-hmm.
I recently had a client that was a nonprofit, and it was an education nonprofit, and they were focused on helping underrepresented populations get certifications in job placement in tech. And so in that particular case, that was not a full nationwide campaign, but was in about 15 different markets.
Mm-hmm.
So the size of the scale of the clients vary depending on kind of the nature of the vertical and also kind of where they're coming from. But typically the clients that I'm calling on for new business development tend to be small, medium-sized businesses. Many of them tend to be in New England, sometimes outside of New England. And really, it's really about just having a conversation about, where are their gaps and helping them identify the gaps. So in other words, what do you want your marketing to do? Where is the marketing opportunity? When I sit down with clients, what I typically find, because part of my job is to determine how can I help them the best. And so even when I approach a client, typically, the way I approach a client with the value of what we offer is I'll typically say, most of the clients that I'm working with, they're either not getting the quality or the quantity of the leads they're looking for. They're concerned they're not reaching the right type of customer audiences that are most appropriate and will value their service the most. They lack the internal bandwidth to continue to maintain and optimize their own campaigns, and they really just don't know their numbers. They don't know what's working, what isn't, and what to improve.
I would think those last things are pretty ubiquitous, right? They don't know what they're trying to measure. Drawing a blank. I got ahead of myself. I was thinking of the next
what
question.
it is that a lot of times they really don't know. So in a case, there might be an opportunity where sometimes you're dealing with a client and they just need lead flow, right? I'm a roofing contractor. It's the season. I want to pump out leads, right? But in some cases, it's a business where they don't necessarily need to pump out leads. If their capacity right now is at a 6 or a 7, they don't need you to not get up to 12. But there's typically a lot of times there's certain areas in their business that, they're busy, but are they the right kind of busy? And are they targeting the opportunities in their marketplace that are actually the most lucrative and the highest value to them?
Right.
And part of that process is kind of part of that conversation of saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, I know you're busy, but are you the right kind of busy? If you're the HVAC contractor, if you're okay doing service work all day long, that's great. And if you're super busy with service work, fantastic. But, if you really want to be doing those mini splits and that's really where you want to get the most revenue, well, that's more strategic. And there's going to be, you can't just keep doing what you're doing and have that outcome. There has to be a way to do that. It could be the same thing with a dentist who wants to do more implant cases. It could be the same with a PI attorney who wants to build more of a pipeline around certain type of cases. So a lot of it is, in my role, it's having a conversation about, where are you now? Where do you want to go? Who is your customer? What do we want that customer to do? What are the areas of your business that represent growth opportunity? And then, how are we going to track and measure it? And typically, the ad channels that we typically will investigate typically tend to be like search. I always call search is kind of like paid search is kind of like the salesman. And you've got someone who's come up and essentially raised their hand and said they're interested. They're proactively looking. I usually say that, your presence, your online presence, that's kind of your trusted advisor expert on your team. That's where kind of they go back to eventually when they're evaluating their decision. Online display tends to be something that kind of builds people's awareness of who you are and what you have to offer. And there's ways that can be specifically targeted. Video is a huge opportunity for just about every business. I am the biggest advocate of video for all my clients because the reason I'm a huge advocate for video is, number one, it allows a business to really tell their story in a way that other formats can't. And, we know that people, they make decisions emotionally and then they rationalize it later.
That's right.
It's the same way with video. I think you can tell a story and you can tap into people's motivations and emotions a lot more effectively with video, and you can really connect. And that shows in real metrics. When we look at different platforms that incorporate video, the levels of engagement is typically anywhere between 5, 7, 10 times as much as a static ad. And the other
is better. I didn't know it was that much better.
Yeah, and the biggest area of growth right now is YouTube. Pretty much every business I talk to, I'm looking at, what's their lead gen strategy, what's their overall brand awareness strategy, and then, how are you leveraging video? And I think right now, that's the biggest opportunity for most, even small, medium-sized businesses, is looking at how can you leverage video to tell your story, to build engagement. And one of the best platforms to do that in is YouTube.
What's the best way to measure results?
A combination. I think, you want to be measuring results specific to the platform that you're on, as well as other channels such as Google Analytics, at LOCALiQ, we have something called Client Center, which is basically a aggregator of data from the different platforms that we'd be running for the client, and allows them to have a one central hub to see where all their leads are coming from. For SEO, things like Google Analytics and Search Console are very valuable because they give insights into what keywords are driving activity, what channels are driving activity. So that's really valuable. Just kind of getting that insight and that data can inform better strategy going forward.
What would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions about digital marketing?
That it's an expense. Because, to me, an expense is something that I have to pay, that essentially I might get something out of it, but it doesn't really bring anything back to me, like a light bill,
Yeah.
Digital marketing or marketing in general, if it's done properly and it's optimized well and it's tracked well and you're continuing to iterate on it, should really, it's an investment, and it's a scalable investment. And
What is can you give me a couple benchmarks for what a company, it probably varies by industry size, but just round numbers, just challenge people a little bit. What should companies be investing, say, monthly in their marketing?
it's really individual to a company, and also it depends on your industry. It depends on where you're located. If you are a plastic surgeon in Manhattan,
Okay.
your budget is going to be very different than a plastic surgeon in North Adams, Massachusetts.
If you're not from New England or the Northeast, look up those two towns.
Yeah. So basically, if you're in a real competitive, dense city area versus something more rural, it's going to be different.
That makes a ton of sense.
Typically, when you're putting together a campaign in general, what you really want to talk about is, okay, well, who am I trying to reach? What is the service I'm trying to reach that person with? And then have an understanding of, okay, well, what's the value of that service? If I get that conversion, what is the value in terms of revenue, both initially off the transaction, and if it's appropriate, what's the lifetime value of that client relationship to me and my business?
Yeah.
And then that sets the basis for, okay, well, what am I willing to pay for a client acquisition to get that gets me that outcome? So in other words, if if I'm a plumber and I say, okay, well, or I'll use another example, a dentist. If I'm a dentist and I'm targeting implant cases, for example, and I can say, okay, well, my average implant case is going to say, give me $5,000. Okay. And I'm going to do the implant, but typically that person is then going to become a patient. And so
lifetime value.
Yeah. Then my lifetime value is the $500 to say $1,200 that we get just from twice a year maintenance. But by the way, now that person has a spouse. They have 2 kids.
There's an acquisition cost of the client.
Right.
And there's a lifetime value.
There's a lifetime value.
It keeps giving.
And a lot of that is actually something that you almost have to map out to a client. And one of the tools that we have here is we have tools that specifically allow us to both create accurate budgets, but then also be able to show clients based upon your industry, based upon average cost per click, average conversion rates for your industry. This is a fair expectation of what you should expect.
All right. We are, believe it or not, out of time, but I have one good question. Who should reach out to you in the viewing and listening audiences, and why?
Anybody. I won't say anybody. That's like the cardinal rule not to say anybody. I would say business owners, particularly business owners in the area of legal, medical, dental, home services, who feel like they're not getting either the quantity of leads they're looking for. They're confused or would have been intimidated as far as what are the best platforms to be on and to get effective ROI. Or maybe they've tried digital marketing in the past and it wasn't successful. but they're seeing their peers engage successfully, and they are looking for an effective roadmap. Those would be good people to reach out to me.
Excellent. Listen, thank you so much. That went really fast.
Yeah, it did go fast.
It does. 50 minutes goes really fast with a good conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Paul. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for your time. I appreciate you having me on.
You got it. And thanks everybody for watching, and listening. This is a show about business challenges. If you've got concerns about the growth of your company, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Winning Business Radio. You can drop me a note, kevin@winningbusinessradio.com, one of the many email addresses, right, Paul? Our company is Winning Incorporated. We're part of Sandler Training. We develop sales teams into high achievers and sales leaders into true coaches and mentors. Listen, we know we're not right for everybody, but hey, maybe we should have a call. Thank you to producer engineer Juan, for another job well done. We'll be back at it again Monday, July 18th, 4 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to join us then. This is Kevin Hallinan. Thanks for being here.
You've been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.